Welcome to Discovery Watch with John Kaiser.
I'm Jim Goddard. John, welcome back to the show.
Jim, pleasure to be back on the show.
John, what are the arsenic XRF readings telling us about the core holes at the Reliance project of Endurance Gold?
Unfortunately, Jim, they're not telling us anything because the company is not providing them as I had expected. They started a 4,000-meter drill program on August 25th at the Reliance project, and that's in southwestern British Columbia, several hours drive from Vancouver. And they provided 2 progress updates. Now, earlier in the year, when they did the shallow RC drill program, they would publish updates along with sections of what they had intersected, and they would provide their XRF unit readings. And they had a portable gun, and they would shoot these the RC chip bags as they came out and publish it. And when they got the geochemical assays, their readings were very close to the geochemical assays, but more importantly, there was a strong correlation between gold and the gold grade and the arsenic grade. So with 8 to 10 week turnaround time in the labs these days for assays, we were looking forward to seeing sort of sneak previews of what they were encountering at Reliance. And the story there, it's a 1,500 meter long corridor, about 300 meters wide, separated by 2 faults, the Royal and the Shear, and the Treasure. And it's been sheared and it's very well mineralized. They're finding gold mineralization all over the place. It's an old project from the 80s where the Imperial Zone was found. They now think that's more a feeder type system that Charlie Boitard tried to understand way back then. It's subvertical. But what they found last year with the help of the RC drilling was the Eagle Zone. And these are more like flat or slightly dipping panels, like the rungs in a ladder with the 2 faults, the Royal and the Treasure fault, the rails of the ladder. And this is supposed to be a readout system where you have a whole series of these within this structure, and they can repeat themselves all the way down to 4,000 meters in this orogenic type of a system. So there's potential for many, many zones, and they've been getting very good grades. But what they're still very confused about is what is the geometry of this system. So this core drilling program is very important because it will tell them how are these gold mineralized zones oriented, what is their geometry, where do they repeat. And on Monday they put out an update telling us that they had completed 10 holes, 7 of them into the Eagle Zone, and 3 of them into the Imperial Zone with a 4th one underway. They're going to drill 1 into the crown target between the 2, and then maybe they'll move up into the Eagle South, which is at the northeastern end of the property where it goes up the hill. And they've done some Douglas fir sampling in that area, which shows that the arsenic anomaly in the fir branches shifts over a bit to the northwest. So they think there's a fault offsetting that, and they would like to get the rig up there. They've got some roads in there. But where were these XRF readings? So I called up Robert Boyd, the CEO, and he said the problem with core is that they have a portable unit in the field, and when you point the nose of the gun at the core, it will read whatever in the way. And if you happen to have it on an arsenopyrite veinlet, you're going to get an off-the-scale reading. You move it over 10 centimeters where there's just some silica, well, then you're going to get nothing. So to get a meaningful reading is very difficult with core unless you have it in a core logging facility with a mounted XRF unit where you can feed the core in with computer controls and take all these readings and create a meaningful collection for each segment of core. With the RC chips, they would take the bags and they would be able to take number of shootings of it, and it turned out to be very reliable and consistent. So they are not providing us with any XRF readings, so we do not get a sneak preview. At the rate they're going, they've got half of their 4,000 meter program done. They figure they'll be done by early November, but we probably won't start seeing any assays until mid-November. Now, this doesn't mean that it's totally blind, because the arsenopyrite is closely associated with pyrite and pyrrhotite, and they can see both of that in the core. So they are seeing the Eagle Zone where they expect to see it, and they've one of the interesting things is the whole purpose of the core drilling was to bypass the oxidized portion where you get poor recovery. Well, of the 7 holes that they drilled into the Eagle Zone, the main mineralized zone, only one of them actually got into fresh rock where the sulfides are present. But they've drilled these holes 82 to 262 meters deep, and several of them have encountered a second zone that's 80 degrees, dipping 80 degrees. It's a quartz stockwork sulfides, and of course they cannot tell if there's any gold, but they're very curious about, well, what that will actually say. They're pretty confident that the Eagle Zone itself is taking shape as a mineralized body, but what they really want to see is repetition of high-grade zones within this corridor. And as for the drilling in the Imperial area, they are taking that down deeper in one area than has been done before. And the main reason for that is the old core is all rotted and not properly kept, and they can't really use that to do the structural analysis that was never done in the early decades of this project's exploration. Because for them, this project, I mean, they've got a 300 meter by 1500 meter area where there's gold mineralization all over the place. And one say, well, why don't you do an Osisko windfall thing and just start Swiss cheesing this on a grid, put in, tens of thousands of meters and then let the computers figure it all out. And they say, well, it's not that simple, and it does go down 3-4 kilometers likely. And we need to develop a geological model of how these zones behave within this system. So part of what they're doing now is carefully drilling all these holes, sorting out the geometry. When this program is finished, they'll have a much better understanding of the controls. They're also intrigued by the eastern part of this corridor near the treasure shear where the RC drilling picked up values. They've also done some field sampling at the southern end, right by Carpenter Lake. They found the gray rock zone, which is a sort of 4.7 meter channel sample with a 9 gram per ton gold, and that's at the treasure part. All the activity in the past has been on the Royal Fault side in the vicinity of that. So they think there's also another structure in the northern part of the western part of the corridor that they also need to sort out. So they may return with an RC program, because that's all shallow drilling, and because of the oxidation, RC is the best way to recover near surface samples of these oxidized zones. But the project, this is an extremely interesting one. I've elevated it to a good spec value rated favorite. The price has sagged because we're in this general market funk, and everybody's expecting gold to fade back to where it was at the start of last year. But also the market doesn't understand the system. They cannot tell that this thing has, 300 to 1,000 to 1,000,000 ounce potential within the near surface portion that could repeat itself multiple times as it goes deeper. So for me, this is like a wonderful accumulation window. We won't learn anything new in terms of gold grade until probably mid to late November. Then we'll start seeing the architecture, geometry of how this all hangs together and what they want to do next. And that'll be the tipping point where people start saying, wow, you have a very interesting system. And the company, because it's in British Columbia, it's flow through, so they could raise flow through. The hope by the company is that the stock in December is trending up, that they can get a good premium price flow through financing to kick off work next year. But as far as I can tell so far, this project's shaping up very nicely. The key new grade results that we're looking for when they start coming in will be, what is this other zone that's dipping at 80 degrees all about? Is it also well mineralized with gold? And of course, chasing the Eagle Zone northeastwards into the Eagle South, and then checking out the Upper Eagle, finding out what that's all about, and and maybe this thing goes beyond 1,500 meters at the Carter end, where they have arsenic values up. That's 2 kilometers of strike for this system. So in big picture terms, it's a relatively small footprint, but because these grades are 10 to 15 grams per ton, up in that range, you could end up building an awful lot of ounces within this footprint that they are now focused on.
We'll have more with John Kaiser right after this.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications, patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're speaking with John Kaiser. John, did Adamara Minerals ever report results for its Cooke Mountain project in Washington?
Well, Adamara Minerals started drilling in early May, and it had good progress. It reported on June 9th that it had managed to get 5 holes done on the Goodfoot, Lamefoot South, and Oversight targets. And this is within the Cooke Mountain project in the Republic Graben, which Hochschild optioned. It can earn up to 75% by delivering a feasibility study over 8 years. But what they were hoping to get here was confirming that these IP targets that had been generated by this deeper penetrating IP survey that Hochschild recommended, that these would end up being new zones, new discoveries. Historically, they've looked at the limestone-hosted skarn with associated magnetite as the target where the gold is, but with a lot of the work they've been doing over the past few years, they've realized that the clastic sediments that are in close proximity to these limestones are themselves a significant gold host. So the purpose of this drill program was to see if these IP targets, which were likely sulfide bodies, mineralized disseminated sulfide bodies, would also have gold in them. And they reported that, yes, these plastic sediments did have sulfides in it, but of course you can't tell what the gold is. Well, they put out another news release on July 27th where they said they had managed to complete a total of 8 holes for 3,000 meters, but had to shut down operations because the forest fire risk. And the first batch of 5 holes are now overdue. And the other ones, well, we're now in the 9th week, so we're in that 8 to 10 week window. The remaining holes are in the Oversight area, which is in the eastern part of the Republic Graben, where on its own Adamara has spent most of its drilling efforts during the past few years. I would suggest that by now they should have seen the results from the Goodfoot, Lamefoot targets, and if they had a discovery hole in there with decent gold grades, that would have deserved a press release, and they would be planning on, okay, we need to do follow-up. We haven't heard a thing, so I think it's probably thumbs down for those targets. There may still be hope for the Oversight and Overlook targets, but these are sort of leftover targets. The Overlook was mined out, that they're looking on the peripheries, and the Oversight's close by. They would need to tell us a good story about whether they learned anything new if they did manage to get any gold assays. And by the end of this year, Hochschild will have funded $800,000 US on this project. That's still well short of the $8 million it needs to spend to earn 60%. I'm not optimistic that they will stay in the game, but maybe they'll learn something that gives them a fresh approach. My interest in the company is now 100% behind Buckhorn 2.0, which they staked in early 2020 to surround the original Buckhorn 1.0 mine that Crown Resources found, and that which Kinross acquired and then developed as an underground mine. It was originally attempted to be permitted as an open pit mine, but this was a no-go in northeastern Washington. But it ended up being a very profitable underground mine, which Kinross had to shut down in 2017 because they simply ran out of ore. But before that, they put a tremendous effort into the surrounding area. They did physical surveys, geochemical sampling, and even drilled 30 or so holes outside the Buckhorn mine area. And then they applied for this monster plan of operations, which would have resulted in 120 kilometers of road building and 675 drill sites to support 950 drill holes. And that application hit the wall because it was in the jurisdiction of the Okanagan-Wenatchee Division of the U.S. Forest Service. That has a very much a recreational bent, and they don't particularly like mining, so that went nowhere. And Kinross eventually gave up on it, let those claims lapse. It's of course stuck owning the original Buckhorn mining leases because it has ongoing reclamation liabilities associated with those. But Adamara went in there and staked or optioned the entire original package, and it has been angling for something very important. The database that Kinross developed that supported this enormous exploration permit application. And they started negotiating with Kinross at the beginning of this year, and apparently there was a lot of back and forthing. But finally, on September 8th, they got a deal, and the deal is a very good one. They only have to pay a 2% NSR, of which half of it can be bought for $2 million. Kinross is not coughing up the original application, which shows where all the sites are. It's simply getting the data. The data did not include stream sediment sampling or ground magnetometer surveys. So this year, while Adamara was waiting to get a deal with Kinross, it conducted 300 line kilometers of ground magnetometer surveys, and it's now doing the stream sediment survey to also get a bigger picture. And they're now entering the compilation mode. They got lucky last year in the second half. The U.S. Forest Service changed the boundaries of the Colville jurisdiction, which hosts the Cooke Mountain project, and the Okanagan-Wenatchee. So the Buckhorn project is now actually inside the Colville division, and the people there that run that, they're more oriented towards commercial applications. It's not a place that people visit for recreation as much as the western part. So Adamara is optimistic that they will be able to get permits to pursue exploration. They think they can get the original permit application from Kinross when the transition gets sorted out, and that will help them go in there and then prioritize targets. They have a permit application to drill the Keystone and Magnetite targets, of which the Keystone is the most interesting one, where something was hit by consolidated ramrod way in the early days before Crown even found the Buckhorn 1.0 deposit, and there was some mineralization there that was not followed up. They hope to get a permit for that in middle of October, and be able to drill those two targets. Those are relatively small-scale drilling programs. They do have the money for it. I think they have about $1.8 million left in the treasury, and they have 15.7 million warrants between 10 and 12 cents that expire in a very small 3-week window between December 22nd of this year and January 11th. That would raise about $1.6 million. The tackling the Buckhorn 2.0 is really a story for 2022, but the Keystone and Magnetite targets which they have already developed, these could deliver some joy in the interim. So for this junior, it sagged back to 5 cents, again, part of the general malaise with regard to resource juniors, but also because the market's not expecting anything from Cooke Mountain, nor is it seeing anything coming from the Buckhorn 2.0 story. And a lot of people don't even understand that this is a very significant play that Mark Kalibaba now has on its hands. It has attracted to the board and even as shareholders former people associated with Crown Resources, which Kinross managed to buy pretty cheap for $230 million when the deal finally closed in, I think it was 2006. And then over the next few years, the stock went down 70%. So anybody who kept with it ended up with even less. So people like Mark Jones and Chris Harold, they're now part of Adamara. So Adamara's fan club has shifted from the crowd of 3 or 4 years ago who were interested in Cooke Mountain to a lot of people that made money on the Crown Resources Buckhorn 1.0 story. I think Adamara Minerals, even though it has a lot of paper outstanding, fully diluted, it's going to be a very interesting play next year. Hopefully they get the permit, get a rig, get some holes into Keystone and Magnetite that create some joy, in time to get those warrants exercised. And if they don't get them exercised, well, at least that overhang is out of the way, and maybe they'll get a better financing as we head into the 2022. So far, 2021, except for the first quarter, is looking like a bust for resource juniors. Maybe 2022 will be a better year for the juniors.
John, thank you so much for the update.
You're welcome, Jim.
We've been talking with John Kaiser, his website, kaiserresearch.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on Discovery Watch are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at howstreet.com. Discovery Watch is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.